What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. Today I would like to show you the best Strand Warlock build of Season of the Wish. An incredible build that will dominate at any level of gameplay. And no, we're not talking about the Apotheosis Veil or the Swarmers. Instead, we're looking at a build that has never been as strong as it is right now. This build includes the dazzling combination of the Necrotic Grips and the Thorn. No, the Osteostriga. Wait, no, what am I talking about? The Quicksilver Storm. Now, before you ask, we're not including the Thorn or the Osteostriga because unlike those weapons of sorrow that are still kinetic-based weapons, the Quicksilver Storm is a Strand weapon which will provide much better synergy this season, which in turn will provide us with a much more reliable and a much more powerful build when it comes to PvE content. Yes, the Osteostriga and the Thorn provide poisonous damage, which gets coupled alongside the Necrotic Grips poison. But because of the Quicksilver Storm's intrinsic trait, alongside the new seasonal artifact, and the poison that we're getting because of the Necrotics, this is going to be an exotic that's going to be a much more effective option this season. And let's be honest, most players, especially casual ones, will have a much easier time using an auto rifle as opposed to a hand cannon. And after getting nerfed, the Osteo just isn't as good as it once was, and it still just got horrible accuracy. But the Quicksilver Storm is a much more complete and well-balanced weapon, which is going to make you a much more efficient soldier. Season of the Wish continues to cater to the strength of Strand builds within the options of the new seasonal artifact. We have mods that give Strand weapons unraveling capabilities, the ability to suspend enemies, and the ability to create threadlings. These added abilities are made possible by the use of the Unraveling Orbs, Dragon's Bite, and Horde Shuttle mods. Unraveling Orbs grants any Strand weapon the ability to pierce barrier champion shields, and it'll cause tiny threads of Strand to seek out enemies and continuously inflict damage. Each second and a half, enemies will get hit with 3 of these Strand threads, and each of them will deal a small amount of damage based on the combatant's difficulty level. At its base, this accounts for 29 points of damage each, but that's applied every second and a half. And with Dragon's Bite, breaking enemy shields or stunning champions with Strand weapons will have a chance at causing those enemies to become suspended. And because of Horde Shuttle, when we defeat enemies that are affected by any source of Strand debuffs, which include suspension and unraveling, they will create threadlings. Threadlings that will then seek out new enemies, inflicting a base amount of 338 points of area damage. And if there's no enemies to destroy, those threadlings are going to come back and perch right up next to us. So we're getting a lot of bonus power-ups with this artifact that are going to be very cohesive with our Strand class tree, the Necrotic Grips, and most importantly, the Quicksilver Storm. And there are other artifact mods that will be beneficial for us, but we'll talk more about those later in the video. For now, let's talk more about the Quicksilver Storm. Probably one of the best Strand weapons and best exotics that the Lightfall expansion produced. This is a 720 RPM auto rifle that feels incredibly smooth. It's got great accuracy, great range, great reload speed, just an all-around amazing auto rifle. And it even has its own grenade launcher mode that won't inflict self-damage, which is definitely a benefit in its own. If that wasn't enough, this weapon comes with nano tracer rockets, so when you land multiple shots, little homing rockets are going to shoot out at enemies. In a way, this is like the nanotech origin trait that the Neomuna legendary weapons have. But unlike those weapons, the Quicksilver Storm does not benefit from the use of the Origin Perk Specialization mod. This exotic auto rifle starts as a kinetic weapon, but once you've unlocked its catalyst, it converts into a Strand weapon that's able to create tangles. It's technically only supposed to create these off of final blows with its grenade launcher mode, but tangles will get made with final blows of either mode. With grenades, homing rockets, tangles, and unraveling rounds, the Quicksilver Storm will be the perfect Strand weapon to combine with the Necrotic Grips. This is an exotic that's going to apply a ton of bonus damage to any enemy. It provides a continuous supply of poisoning damage to enemies, and when those enemies are defeated, that poison will be spread to other nearby enemies. And this poison is getting combined with the power of the Arcane Needle. This charged melee attack has crazy range, and when it strikes enemies, those enemies become unraveled, causing more damage to be applied, and will have up to 3 of these to use. There's also the option of the grapple melee attack, which is perfect to go along with the necrotic grips, as it will create area damage on top of the necrotic's poisonous effects. And just as the arcane needles do, this will cause enemies to become unraveled, giving them a double dose of bonus damage. The downside is that in some of the more difficult content, like Grandmasters, the grapple melee can get you into trouble. So depending on what activity you're in, you may want to utilize the effects of shackle grenades along with Weaver's Treants, and leave all the bonus poisoning and unraveling to the arcane needles. Let's go ahead and talk about our choice in strand aspects. We are using Mindspun Invocation, so when we do use the grapple melee, threadlings are going to get generated. But when we consume a shackle grenade, we'll gain Weaver's Trance, which will cause enemies to become suspended after any final blow, as long as those enemies were within 4 meters of the detonation. Suspended enemies are much more vulnerable to the effects of necrotic grips, because they're just stuck there, and when those infected enemies die, they're just going to spread that poison, which is going to continue the effects of Weaver's Trance, trickling down into a domino effect. So this will be a great asset to use alongside the Quicksilver Storm, especially with its grenade launcher mode. We're also using the Wanderer. This will cause tangles to suspend targets, and threadling final blows will start creating tangles, which is going to allow us to have 2 continuous sources of tangle creation and suspensions. When it comes to our choice in Fragments, our goal is to improve the regeneration of our abilities and to give us additional survivability. We're using Thread of Generation, which is going to give us bonus grenade energy whenever we deal damage. This provides a small amount of energy every second, as long as damage is getting applied. And since we'll have the necrotic grips and unraveling rounds applying continuous damage, this will greatly improve our ability to have our grapple melee or shackle grenade available at all times. We're also using Thread of Fury, so whenever we damage targets with a tangle, which is going to happen a lot, bonus melee energy is going to get generated. This is based on the combatant's difficulty level, but it ranges between 10% and 30%. We've also got Thread of Warding to grant us Woven Mail whenever we collect orbs. Woven Mail will provide us with 45% damage resistance, and it lasts 10 seconds, and it's going to get reactivated every time an orb is collected. This is the single most important fragment to use on just about any strand build, and to complement Thread of Warding, I would recommend to use Thread of Isolation, which is going to cause targets to become severed on consecutive precision hits. Severed enemies deal 40% less damage, an effect that can also be found on strand weapons with the Slice weapon trait, which gives us a substantial advantage when going up against tougher enemies like champions, tormentors, and bosses. But let's say you have the Slice weapon trait on another weapon, and let's say you're using the grapple melee instead. Well, in that case, Thread of Ascent might become a better option. This way, your weapons will become automatically reloaded whenever you use your grenade ability, something that's going to really come in handy when you grapple yourself into a big group of enemies, and it's really going to be a benefit when going into damage phases. Now, when it comes to the weapons that we'll be using with this build, the preferred energy option is the Indebted Kindness, but not for the reason that you might think. This is an insanely powerful weapon that can drop with Volt Shot, but it can also drop with Permeability, which allows this weapon to change its energy type whenever we cast our Rift. This means the Indebted Kindness will be able to unravel and suspend targets and create threadlings. This is also a weapon trait available in the Lithophobia, a great legendary void bow that gets the added benefit of stunning unstoppable champions this season, and with permability, it'll trigger all those strand bonuses. Now when it comes to our choice in heavy, the circular logic is my usual go-to, but since it can drop with slice, the Marcato 45 has really been a solid option this season. But heavy machine guns aren't quite meta this season, since they benefit from blast radius, overload rockets, and argent ordnance, the crowning duologue, and the Semi-Utosian Strand rocket launchers will both be incredibly powerful options this season, since argent ordnance is going to apply a bonus 15% damage. If you're a guardian who enjoys swordplay though, the Dragon Cult Sickle is more than just a badass named sword. It's a strand caster sword that can drop with both surrounded and slice. A really fun weapon to play around with, especially with this build. When it comes to the character stats that you want to focus on with this build, in PvE, resilience and recovery are both going to be the stats that you want to keep close to 100. This way you'll have the most optimal base damage resistance, the fastest health regeneration time, and the quickest uptime on Rift Energy. With that said, any build that features the Necrotic grip will want to focus on strength. This will improve the uptime of Arcane Needles. Since my current setup has the grapple melee selected, I'm also focusing into discipline. So this way my grenade uptime is going to be as low as 41 seconds at base, before any of our armor mods or any strand abilities start to kick in. When it comes to armor mods, our goal is to improve the uptime of our abilities and to create orbs, so that way we have woven mail. So to create orbs, we're using harmonic siphon mods, a heavy-handed mod, and a reaper mod. And to produce additional orbs, we're also making use of the Wished into Being seasonal artifact mod. This is going to generate bonus orbs off of ability final blows whenever we're close to having our super energy full. So not only will this help get our super energy faster, but it's going to help us maintain woven mail. And woven mail is not the only thing that orbs are going to provide for us. If we're using the recuperation boots mod, those orbs are going to grant 40 points of health. And if we're using the innervation mod, those orbs are going to provide 10% grenade energy. But an invigoration mod could provide 10% melee energy. Orbs are also going to give us armor charges, which we'll need for grenade kickstart. This will consume armor charges to provide grenade energy, which works out really nicely if we're using the grapple melee. But even if we're using Weaver's Trains with shackle grenades, grenade kickstart would still be a great benefit for us. And to boost our armor charges, we can use the charged up chest mod or the stacks on stacks boots mod. This way we can get the most grenade energy back when grenade kickstart gets activated. And to give all of our abilities some extra improvements in uptime, we're using the distribution class item mod. So whenever we cast our rift, we'll gain a small amount of energy that's going to be applied to each of our abilities. And with that, I do believe we've now covered everything about this amazing Quicksilver Necrotic Strand build. An absolutely perfect build to take into any level of content during Season of the Wish, and a much more superior combination than the Thorn or Osteo could provide. To that extent, if you have not given the Quicksilver Storm, the Necrotic Grips, and this Strand Warlock a try, it is high time you do so. And once you have, let us know what your thoughts were in the comments below. Thank you as always for checking out the video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated, and both really do help support the channel. If you want to make a quick copy of today's build, you can easily do so by visiting the link in the description below. And if you're a new Light Guardian, just starting your journey, or a battle-hardened veteran, just looking for a new home, be sure to check out the Discord link that's also in the description, and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.